Hey, guess whaters? Guess what we're going to learn about today? We're going to learn all about our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. And I bet you don't know all of the facts that you're going to learn today. So if you want to know more, let's start the video. But before we do, make sure you subscribe. Ready? All right, let's go. Now, you probably know that there are 50 states in the United States, but did you know that the home of the government isn't found in a state at all? It's in a separate district called the District of Columbia, which is the United States of America's capital, or better known as Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is named many things by different people. D.C., the District of Columbia, the District, or sometimes simply Washington. And this can be confusing because there is also a U.S. state called Washington, but the state of Washington is usually called Washington State. Now, since 1800, Washington, D.C. is the home to all three branches of the United States government: the Congress, the President, and the Supreme Court. All of the major political parties are based there as well. Today, Washington, D.C. is a 68 square mile federal district that is home to major government buildings, but it wasn't always this way. Before Washington, D.C. became the nation's capital, the government was based in New York and Philadelphia, as well as other cities. And this was until the U.S. Congress decided the government needed its own land way back in 1790. This way, it would be independent and not controlled by any single state. And James Madison, as well as others, believed it should not be inside any state or city. Then, in 1789, the United States Constitution stated that a capital city would be created in a district, but did not say where it would be. The 13 northern and southern states wanted a capital that would represent them fairly. They didn't want it too far north or too far south. In 1790, an agreement was struck and the capital was placed between Virginia and Maryland. George Washington, the first president of the United States, chose the location of the new capital. It was a square 10 miles long on each side and split by the Potomac River, which separated the two states. Half of the district was in Maryland, which is north of the Potomac River, and the other half was in Virginia, which is south of the Potomac River. These two states granted this land to the government. Then in 1791, it was named Washington, the District of Columbia, to acknowledge George Washington, the first president. Columbia was another name for North America. In 1847, Virginia's piece was returned to the state, and this is now Arlington County, part of the city of Alexandria. And since 1847, all of Washington, D.C. is on the north side of the Potomac River. So why exactly is Washington, D.C. not a state in the United States of America? Well, in 1774, the First Continental Congress, which is a group of representatives from the original colonies, needed a place to gather and meet. The members first used to meet in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and then when George Washington took office in 1789, the capital was located in New York City. But America's founders were concerned that those living in Washington, D.C. could unfairly affect Congress, and therefore determined that these citizens would not have representation in the House of Representatives or the Senate. So even today, Washington, D.C. residents don't have representatives in Congress, but they can vote in federal elections. And now, many residents want the Washington, D.C. name to become its own state, so they would have representation in Congress. If this ever happened, Washington, D.C. might be renamed New Columbia. For a long time, the city's population was small, but it suddenly increased after the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. This was when many newly freed slaves came to live there. In Washington, D.C., you can also find the Washington Monument, the Thomas Jefferson Memorial, and the Lincoln Memorial. And even though it's a busy city, Washington, D.C. has many different kinds of wildlife. You can find Virginia possums, groundhogs, brown bats, as well as other flying squirrels. You might even see the U.S. national bird, the bald eagle. Other birds you might see are cardinals, great blue herons, and the wood thrush, which is the official bird. You'll also find bullfrogs, tree frogs, and toads, including several types of reptiles like box turtles, garter snakes, and even copperhead snakes, which are venomous. And for our final fact, did you know that the city was almost destroyed during the War of 1812 against Great Britain? Wow. So now you know all about the United States Capitol, Washington, D.C. I hope you learned something new, and if you did, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button for us. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next Hey, Guess What?